Chapter 3 will introduce you to some concepts of global business and businesses that do business internationally. They may produce in one country and sell in another country, and you'll learn some basic concepts in this chapter. Global business involves the practices of importing and exporting. Importing is buying goods that are produced in another country, and exporting is selling goods to another country. And the United States imports and exports. When you buy products just about anywhere in any place, you're going to be able to buy imported products, whether it be Walmart or your local grocery store. And of course, if you go to other countries, you will be able to buy items produced in the United States, importing and exporting. Global trade, global business is sometimes a political hot issue, but there are really significant benefits of global trade. For instance, if you buy products at Walmart that are produced in other countries, well, you are probably paying a lot less than you would be if they were produced in the United States. And as a result of free trade around the world and globalization, as you can see with this slide, literacy rates have improved, wages have improved, life expectancy has improved. So there are many advantages of globalization and free trade, but there are also disadvantages as well as economies shift. For example, many manufacturing jobs in the United States have disappeared, and we have transitioned into more of an information economy. When dealing with international trade and global business, countries should consider advantage and what kind of an advantage they may have. And the comparative and absolute advantages were first discussed by Adam Smith many, many years ago in his Wealth of Nations book. But in a comparative advantage, a country should produce and sell what it can do most efficiently, and it should buy what it can't produce as efficiently from other countries. For instance, if the United States can produce wheat better than almost any other country, then it should produce a lot of wheat. And if it can't produce coffee very well, then it shouldn't try to produce coffee. It should focus on wheat. An absolute advantage, there are very few countries that have an absolute advantage, but if they're the only country that can produce something, or they can do it better than anybody else, an example of that might be a rare earth mineral that is only available in one nation within Africa, or if, for instance, the United States was the only country that could produce wheat, which of course it isn't, but that would be an example of absolute advantage. One way global trade is measured within a country, within an individual country, is with its balance of trade. And the balance of trade is just a comparison of the imports versus the exports. And if a country has a trade surplus, in that case then it exports more than it imports. If it has a trade deficit, which as this slide tells you is not really an ideal situation, then the country exports less than it imports. And a good example of that would be China. China has a huge trade surplus because it exports so many different products to the world. And the United States most often has a trade deficit, and one of the reasons for that is it imports a lot of energy and oil. If a country realizes that it's operating at a trade deficit and it wants to change that, it might institute some trade protectionism. And trade protectionism is just a way that the government tries to limit the imports. The idea behind that would be to, as the slide shows you, to save jobs within that country, manufacturing jobs in that particular country. If a government decides that it wants to institute some trade protective measures, one way it can do that is a tariff. And a tariff is a tax on imported goods. For instance, there might be a tariff on foreign cars, so every car might be taxed $500, for instance. That would be a tariff. In addition to tariffs, countries may use quotas or embargoes as trade protectionism measures. And a quota is just a limit of the amount of products that can come in. For instance, the United States might decide to say, okay, we're only going to allow 5,000 imported vehicles to come into the United States each year. An embargo, on the other hand, is say, nope, we're not going to allow any imported vehicles to come in, or whatever the product might happen to be. Again, this is just a brief introduction to the chapter. There's much, much more in the chapter than what we've talked about in this short little video, but spend some time looking over the concepts and learning a little bit more about global business as you read this chapter. And of course, make sure you take the quiz and any other assignments that are due for this particular lesson.